Welcome to the ADNA Know Your Narrator series. Today we have another bonus episode. Today we're very happy to have Nefertiti Matos Olivares with us. Thank you for joining us. Nefertiti, how are you today?
Thank you for having me, Roy. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
Great. I can hear the smile in your voice. I'm doing good. We're so excited to interview you about your audio description writing work. Let's jump in. I love asking out the gate, what do you love about audio description?
I love everything about audio description. I love how involved the process is from a provider's point of view. And I love how much access it allows the consumers.
When it comes to that involvement, your writing, let's jump right into the writing because you worked on a documentary for writing the audio description.
I did. Yeah, recently I was presented with an opportunity that at first felt really sort of like, what to me? And then as I learned more about the project and was encouraged, I sort of found it in myself that, yeah, I genuinely wanted to do this. And more to the point that I could do this. Why not me? And so I stopped being in my own way and I went for it. And I think I did a great job.
When it comes to your professional experience outside of audio description, can you name some skills that contributed to your writing for the audio description?
I hold several hats when it comes to my professional identity. Some of the skills I've developed as a professional include decision making, attention to detail, proper grammar, which is helpful when you're a writer. I mean, all sorts of things that I'm already equipped with because luckily I am a professional in my own right. I wear several hats, if you will, in other spaces. So I felt very equipped to take this on.
When it comes to writing, there's an assumption that the writer simply and exclusively only writes words. And it's like, oh, you just have to write the visuals and throw it in between lines of dialogue. What I'm hearing from you based on your professional experience, you'd said decision making and attention to detail. And it sounds like those skills, I would think that that's a surprise to some of our audiences. Could you talk a little bit more about how those skills have anything to do with writing?
Absolutely. I think they have everything to do with writing. Frankly, just because you can visually access things that may be happening, whether it's in a film, a TV show, what have you, doesn't mean that you can then describe that not just accurately, but succinctly and in a clear way that makes sense to the blind viewer, so that you're not interpreting for them as much as you are conveying information that they can then make their own and have their own experience in parity with sighted audiences. So yeah, just because you can see doesn't mean you can write. And just because you might be able to put one word after the other doesn't mean that you're doing it well and in an effective way. And I feel particularly ready to speak to you about both of those sides of the spectrum, Roy, because, actually, I don't know if you know this, but I'm blind.
So if you're blind, then I'd imagine that you've got a ton of experience using audio description. Has that helped informed your writing?
It definitely has. As a consumer, an avid consumer, I would say, of audio description for years now, I know firsthand how much my world has broadened because of the access that audio description provides. It used to be, and I think a lot of people out there can relate to this, that I would need someone cited and trusted to describe things to me. And that would take them out of the experience. It would feel like they're not just there to entertain themselves or to get lost a little bit. They're there also to perform a job, to perform a duty. And the anxiety of doing that duty well, or me asking more questions. We missed the dialogue. We were just not in the experience, neither one of us. As close as that can bring to people, it can also be an experience that is not as immersive as something like a good movie can and tends to be. So growing up with that, I mean, it was better than nothing. But once I discovered audio description, it was like, I can go to the theater by myself. So that allowed me even more independence. I can sit at home and watch a show on a Friday night if I rather not go out. You know, I can make my own choices without the judgment of, say, my mom when I was younger, like, this is so violent, what are you doing watching this, so that was eliminated. It for me, audio description as a consumer is all about the independence and the autonomy to consume media on my own terms, in my own time, in a way that best fits me as an imaginative human being.
That access that you're talking about, one of the things that hasn't been brought up so clearly before is the independence. I laughed when you said about your, not getting the judgment from your mom, but hearing that this is something that you can experience using the tool of audio description as a consumer. And I got to imagine, Nefertiti, I'm not a writer. I'm a sighted person that, someone gives me a script and I read it. That's my gig. And I have so much respect for the writers because of all these decisions that get made, the things that you've done. And I can recognize as a voice talent when there is a varying level of quality. And what it sounds like is that your experience, both as a blind person and a person who uses audio description, that you can also identify, hey, this works or this doesn't. You used a really great word. I'm just blathering right now. This is just so this is so much fun. When you were talking about the audio description experience, you use the word immersion, and I think this will be a great thing that we can kind of hang on to for this part of the conversation. Can you describe both as a user of audio description and also as a creator of audio description, what does immersion mean to you? If you could boil it down to both of those different roles.
I will try. It's a great
Oh,
question.
good. Okay, I hope that was okay.
Yeah. As a consumer, for me, it's to be part of the film the way the director, the writers, the actors intended me to be. I want to go on that adventure. I want to be on that journey. And I want to know that if there are silent moments or crucial visual elements telling the story, which they so often are, I want to have full access to them. I want to have the full range and spectrum of feeling as anyone else would. And I feel that as a consumer, audio description allows me to do that. It facilitates that process for me. As a provider, as a writer specifically, it allowed me to learn quite a lot, actually, about how to convey something that can be rather simple in the mind of the sighted person viewing. For example, oh, she's wearing a red dress. Well, what if I want to know more than that? And what if there's more space that allows me to know more than that? Like that the dress is red, but also very sparkly, that it's knee length, that there are some beautiful shoes along with it. I mean, this is sort of a trivial example, I guess, but it's just the ability to challenge myself to fit in as much useful, impactful information, how to decide what that information is, first of all, how to fit it into the time allotted, and how to know myself as a blind person, sort of stepping back after things have been written. Like, does that make sense? Is that something that I can actually visualize in my non-visual headspace? And if the answer is yes, then I consider that a job well done. I don't know that it is always a job well done. There's some pretty crappy audio description out there, frankly. And I wonder if any blind people were consulted throughout any of the process. There's this idea of nothing about us without us. And if it doesn't make sense to us, the end user, then I wonder, like, what is a writer doing, right? What is the purpose of a writer if it isn't to convey information, to sort of enhance the access to the end user?
What's the word? Cultivated information, curated information. Like these, you use the word decision a few times in the context of deciding how much to describe. Like, what is the story element? How much room do you have? And even in that quote unquote trivial example that you gave with the red dress, it's like those kinds of decisions you have to make and be able to, to provide this access that you have experienced as a consumer and also as a creator of the audio description track. That's a lot more involved than just putting
It
words together.
absolutely is. It's also keeping in mind the vision of the director, the director of the film, right? As I understand it, they have basically full control of their vision, right? It's their show, their film. If the writer of the audio description is not, I feel, writing in the spirit of what that director is trying to convey, then it's like it can be a kind of disorienting, right? Because a lot of the time we as the blind people consuming this may miss the point. If I'm writing on and on about this red dress, and really what's important is that there's, a lion behind her getting ready to like bite her face off, right? Like, how does that make sense to me? How has that helped me immerse into the story, go along on this journey, be entertained while also maybe learning something along the way, or just sort of finding escape too? It's a lot of parts, I believe. It really isn't as simple as just words describing what you're seeing. It's the spirit of the piece. What is the meaning here? Yes, how much room do you have? How many words can you fit in? What are those words? I feel like curating is, or curate is the perfect word for this, because you are making decisions sometimes on a word by word basis. It really can get that granular.
There's so much that you have unpacked about the writing process in that statement. Thank you for that. And one of the things that, in the midst of all of this, one thing that I really want to go back to is your use of the word spirit. That here we are talking about providing access to the visuals. That's like the stereotypical bare minimum audio description job. But you literally started talking about the vision of the directors and the vision of the producer. You use the word vision in the context of spirit. And so if I combine those two things, it's access to the visuals and the vision. And it's just funny that the word vision is used in this context of the spiritual meaning. Like, what is the point of this story, and how can the audio description writing that you're providing support that in a way that's immersive, that doesn't get in the way? And what a great word, parody too. So these are the things that I'm hearing from you in what you contributed to the audio description track. Let's get into a few more details about the actual experience, if we could, Nefertiti. And I'm totally putting you on the spot here. I'm wondering if you had certain assumptions when it came to writing and how being exposed to the content, like once you got the film and you watched it and you experienced it, there was something that probably happened that was like, oh, I thought it was this, but it really was this. And whether that's something that happened in the movie or maybe it's something about your writing process, could you talk about either of those aspects?
Sure, I can certainly try. I feel that as a blind person, I am particularly attuned to tone of voice specifically, but also the tone of what's being portrayed. And in this case, this documentary has everything to do with a really powerful event that has subsumed the public consciousness for a while now. The documentary is called Say His Name: 5 Days for George Floyd. So, no matter how you may feel about what happened, odds are that you know who George Floyd was, and you know what resulted from his life. More importantly, the last minutes of his life, and how that has sort of sent this country into even more of a tailspin when it comes to racial inequalities and all sorts of things. I am a brown person, and I am a proud brown person who, when viewing this film before audio description, right? Like, I was there to write it. That was my job. I felt such a range of emotions, Roy. It's I'd be hard pressed to name all of them here, because there were so many. Chief among them, this idea that George Floyd touched the lives of so many people and was also touching mine now in a way where I could put words to some pretty powerful visuals for other blind people like me to access. It was pretty horrible. And I don't know that there's a lot of audio described imagery out there of just how horrible things have been. Right. And so now here was this opportunity to grant that to folks who have every right to have access to things.
I'm a sighted white dude, and what you're talking about as a person who is a woman of color and who is blind, there's a lot of intersectionality there. There is no way for me to put myself in that place. I can imagine, but it's not going to be anywhere close to your experience. And I'm sure that that experience not only affected you personally, clearly it has, Nefertiti, but the other thing is that what I'm hearing and what I experienced by watching this film with audio description is that you brought a very powerful message to the audio description that literally supported the director's vision. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that, like working through the actual writing itself. When you came to a point where there was a visual that maybe could have gone in 3 or 4 different directions, could you, and this is such an unfair question to you, Nefertiti. I'm going to try. Can you name like maybe one example where here were a few different directions that you could have gone with the writing, but you chose one because of whatever?
Yeah, I think so. I think the very conscious decision to point out color, a Black woman, a white man, a raised Black fist, decisions like that, words like that, to call this what it was, is not something that I or others, I believe, experience very often. Race seems to be one of these things that is only mentioned if it doesn't default to your, able-bodied white guy, male, frankly.
Mhm.
If anything sort of moves away from that, then maybe we'll hear something like a dark-skinned man, or a dark-haired woman, or something of that sort. That information, it is information, but is it impactful information? I, as a writer, and others, we're not here to fight racism or to dictate a person's view on any given thing. We are here to provide information and to make that information as accurate and as effective as possible. So yes, my conscious, again, I can't say that enough, purposeful decision to distinguish color, to distinguish gender, to talk about the destruction that is seen all throughout this film was very intentional and uncomfortable for me as a woman of color. And I can't even imagine if this was someone else in this place without these points of reference, right? You could be a white person capable of embodying an experience different from yours. So you could be a person writing something that is outside of your scope of experience, right? I'm not saying that it isn't possible, but is it effective? And are you doing it well? I don't know about that. But I also think that there is no substitute for someone who lives this every day, someone with a range of emotions, even personal emotion, a personal stake when it comes to writing. I think it lends the passion that a film, and particularly a film like this, needs. I believe that it affords, the power that it needs. And I really try to shy away from any sort of reserved language. This film, in and of itself, is uncomfortable. How would it be if I, as the writer, come in and try to sugarcoat things or sort of tamp the strength of it down? That's not my place. Quite the opposite. I feel like my place as a writer and as a woman of color who happens to be blind as well was to sort of glare the spotlight on what was being presented, what is being presented in this film, which is a lot of disparity, a lot of desperation, a lot of loss and pain. And that does involve colors, that does involve genders, that does involve, the destruction of a community and the coming together and building up of a community and all sorts of things. And so that's how I approached this particular project.
those decisions that you made. You've come back to this word decision so many times that you have crafted consciously how this film's audio description writing would inform the audience. It's very clear from your passion, the care, and the consideration that you gave. You've mentioned the identifying race and gender. When it comes to the other aspects of the writing of the audio description track, I'm curious if, no spoilers alert, you've worked really hard to do this your own way, and I'm wondering, when you're writing and you have a choice to make, I could write this or I could write that. It sounds like you're really keeping the vision of the producer, the director in mind. You're keeping the experience for the audience and trying to basically connect those in a way that's as clear and supportive of what's happening without getting in the way. That's what I'm hearing from the work that you've done on this particular project. I'm sure every
This is
experience that you
awesome.
have as a writer changes you. As a voice talent, every
Yes.
project that I voice, whether it's, a 30-second commercial or an audio description track for a series, it's like I change, and it's based on many different elements. And I'm curious if you have a similar experience as a writer. When you think about your experience of this writing, how have you changed as a professional writer?
This news of my being blind and writing a visual script has been quite controversial from both sides. Cited, sure, I kind of expected a little bit of that, but even blind folks too. Folks seem to be having a hard time kind of processing how this was done, or that this was done at all, rather than rejoicing and celebrating that a project leader decided to give me a shot, not me specifically, but a blind person, right? Let's keep it general here. Let's talk about this community that this service is sort of enhancing the lives of, as I've said previously. But also, what about including us? What about letting us also have some of that say? Whether it's the writing, the voicing, the engineering. Blind people cannot only be, should not only be, do not only have to be consumers of this. We too can be providers of this. And I do absolutely think that writing is part of that. The fact that I even have to explain this is extremely troubling to me, Roy, quite frankly. I feel like I'm justifying my adaptations here, or just my privilege of even being in this position. And folks out there might have doubts. If I hadn't come out and said, hey, I'm blind, I think this would be just another podcast episode. But that blindness, it lends a different level of something to this, for better or worse. I would like it to just be. I would like for my writing skills to be what's being sort of critiqued or judged or wondered about or applauded, allotted, complimented, etc. Not the fact that I happen to be blind doing this. This justification, I don't think it should ever need to be something that happens, just as nobody else should have to justify, I don't know, their skills based on their race, their orientation, their gender identity, etc. That's not the world I want to live in. So I'm okay with bucking the odds. I'm okay with writing the mini waves that come with normalizing. It's not easy, but what is, right? What thing that really matters, that can really make a difference, is easy. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of what I've learned about myself along this journey. That one, it is something I can absolutely do and do well as a blind person, in spite or despite, or maybe even because of my blindness. And also that there's going to be questions. There are going to be questions and there are going to be doubts out there, and that's okay. Everybody, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
In fact, I hope there's more of this. I hope there are more blind people out there listening who want to try their hand at this and are fortunate enough to make the connections and have the opportunity and opportunities that I have had. And will continue to have, because I'm in this now and I like this now, and I want to be part of audio description as not just a consumer anymore. I also want to be, and I am becoming, more of a passionate provider as well. So stay tuned. And if you're out there doubting or wondering or even yearning, well, here's your example. It's being done. You can do it too.
And with that encouragement that you're sharing with other people who are blind, that it does seem like you're not a random blind person, that there was expertise, there was thoughtfulness, there was perspective that contributed to the high quality of writing that you provided, and that that kind of training can happen for blind people, and that whether it's a manufactured barrier or otherwise, that there is something there about this work being uncharted in the way that you are now normalizing. You pioneering this is what great hands to be in, to be able to begin this normalizing because of what you've spent this interview talking about. That we haven't avoided you being blind. We've had it a part of the conversation, but it's not been the thing. It's not like, "Hey, look at the blind writer." It's been, "Look at what this writer has brought because of X, Y, and Z, and all these other aspects." And so I guess what I'm hearing is that you aren't needing to justify why your writing is great because you're blind. And I'm very sorry that that is a response that's been solicited of you. And I think that when the implication is, well, how does a blind writer write for the visuals, is an equally strange question as how does a blind person use an iPhone or an Android device? It's like, that's not the point. I'm sure you're great on your Android or iPhone. Not that it matters, but it's like either way, you've got a way to access
That's it.
your phone. And
That's it.
I've texted you and you've texted back, and I just know that this is a form of communication. I don't think about, oh, I wonder if she's using X, Y, or Z of how she's accessing this. That's really fascinating. How amazing that Nefertiti, that's not even a glitch. It's like, can we meet at this time for the interview? Yes, great, thanks, thumbs up, we're good. It's like
That's it.
we took away a barrier. And when I say we, let's use our society, that here's these devices that were created for the abled world. It's a screen. It's a phone screen,
It's
and
a
it's now
flat phone
it's a
screen.
flat screen, right? There
No
you go.
buttons.
Exactly. So this flat phone screen, it's not even a glitch because it's so normalized. It's not a problem. Thank you for being a part of this interview and for sharing everything that you have. It's rewarding to be able to hear the behind the scenes of how you wrote this work, simply because of the care and the compassion and the clarity and the crafting. Let me see if I can find another C word. The decision making, the concise, like all of these things that you brought to it made it not only come alive, but also support the director's vision. I'm sure a lot of people would assume, oh, to write audio description, it's probably a little bit longer than the actual time length of the film. Is that true?
It does take time. I mean, again, this isn't just putting pen to paper or fingers to a keyboard and rat tat 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 tat, you're done. This is an art form, folks. I can't stress that enough. This is serious work. At least it is for me. And I think for any good writer, it would be. And so it takes time, it takes effort, it takes thought. It also takes being good at having words, all of your C words, Roy. Congratulations. That was great.
Oh, congratulations. This is your turn.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into this that I personally, before sitting down to writing, didn't have the full scope of. So I can totally understand folks out there wanting to know the very granular kind of ins and outs of how this thing or that thing is done. But I don't know that that's where the focus lies. The focus is in
Mhm.
the quality of the content, not so much how it gets done.
Nice.
That's how I live my life, and that's how I'm going to carry myself through this brave new world that I've entered. That I am here, and that is enough. I am here, and I've earned my place here. Somebody decided to give me a chance, and I did not let them or me or the audience down. And so that's how I'm viewing this and viewing everything else that I'm a part of, inside or outside of audio description. It's just who and how I am. But also, I want to thank you for being the kind of open-minded person who doesn't blink, haha, at the fact that there are blind people in all aspects of this work.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, it takes someone who's pretty special to do that. I'm sad to say that. Not that you're not special, you're wonderful, but you're also not common when it comes to just how relaxed you are in this space, how, I can't say it enough, unencumbered you are when it comes to blind people joining this effort, not just being consumers of it, but working alongside you. This may be a controversial statement, Roy, but bear with me here. There are folks out there who have made it pretty clear how ableist thoughts are alive and well. Some people even feel as though we blind folk are out there to steal their jobs. Like, hey, sit at home and be grateful for what we're doing for you. How dare you come into this space and make us think about our assumptions? But I can definitely tell you that I and others like me, our intentions are not to sort of take over the industry. Certainly, I'm not about kicking every sighted writer out of existence. But this industry has spoken for us for too long, not alongside us for decades now. And ever since audio description began, I feel like sighted people have become the gatekeepers of it. And it has very quickly become an ableist industry. So with those very firm and very true, in my world, statements out there, I want to say that not once did the person who hired me to do this job doubt me because of my disability. In fact, I think that blindness was seen as an asset. Not only am I a good writer, but I live this blindness thing every minute of every day. And also, and of course, this helps a ton, I know what makes for good audio description. Just because a person may have full use of their eyesight doesn't mean that they are a good writer, or that what that eyesight is conveying is something that they can artfully put into words in a way that is effective. I hope that gives people things to think about. I hope it allows you to question your own assumptions of what's possible, because a lot is possible. With the right mindset and the right supports, I think anything is possible, even if you're blind.
Tons of respect for you and how you so clearly shared that. It's no wonder you're such a great writer. One of the conversations I had with, I think it was Satana. Yeah, it was Satana Howery. We were talking about the difference between proving and modeling. And the context was that the proving is that justification that you addressed. It's like simply because of your blindness, people have an assumption that that is of a different quality, and therefore you must prove and justify your actions, versus modeling by simply doing what you do and letting the work speak for itself. And it's a fascinating little nuanced conversation between proving and modeling. And I'd like to thank you for modeling what excellent audio description is, and for sharing so much about your process and your background of how you wrote the audio description for the film Say His Name.
Thank you, Roy. I'm a big fan of Satana's, and you, of course, if that's not obvious already. So the fact that this conversation has happened and will continue to happen, I think is very important. Either
That was a
include
mic
that or
drop,
not.
wasn't it? That was a mic drop.
Sorry.
That was a literal mic drop with a figurative mic drop.
Intentional, but yes. I think that this conversation of proving versus modeling is hugely important. And I would add that I think the proof is in the modeling a lot of the time. By doing, we're showing what's possible, right? In this case, and I don't think we've mentioned this, but this was an all blind team. Everyone involved with the audio description part of this film is blind. And so if that's not a model, I don't know what is. And if that's not proving or proof, then I don't know what is.
And how great that we don't need to prove this. It just is. That
It just is. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think that's part of normalizing, behaving in such a way as though this is just what's being done. Not so much that it's being done, but that it is being done. And not getting so lost in the weeds of how and who, but more the privilege of one being part of something like this, but also being eager for more of this sort of thing, proud even to be part of things, even if it's consuming the media that's out there. That makes you part of it too, right? Because it means that there's content out there that people are choosing to spend their time on. And I'm trying to say that like that consuming is a part of this too, right? Like we provide the service, but we need to have folks who take advantage of the service as well. So if we make a concerted, unified effort to behave as though this is just how things are, this is how things work, and this is what's possible without questioning it to death or picking the processes apart, I think we'll get a lot further in a great many ways. More content will be available, more jobs will be available. I feel like there's room for everyone in this field.
Thanks for sharing that, Nefertiti. It's quite a beautiful connection on many different levels. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope to be a name that becomes more and more recognized as I progress in this field. I'm invested in this, and I hope to have many years more of being able to join the modeling being done in this field by folks like you and Satana and others, more than having to focus half of my energies on the proving. You know, that can be so soul sucking that I really look forward to a day when I and others are judged on our merits and not so much on what we happen to not have.
Thanks for sharing that. How can people follow you either on social media, website, some publicly available reach you thing?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. I am at Nef Mat Oli. That's N as in Nancy, E F, M as in Mary, ATOLI. And that's really the most public and easiest way to get a hold of me.
Oh, thanks again, Nefertiti. This has been a wonderful and very thorough conversation.
Thank you again for the opportunity. It really is a privilege, Roy.